You're listening to the Integrated Business Planning Podcast, where we share stories of business transformation with your host, Lance Tyler, founder and CEO of ActionKPI.
So Heather, thank you for joining the podcast today. Why don't we start with your title? What do you do? And then we'll talk a bit. And then I'll ask the question. What do you do as a morning routine?
Sounds good. Okay. Thanks for having me. I'm actually excited. I'm excited to deep dive into the questions and stuff. So my name is Heather Dumont. I'm Director of Finance for National Seating and Mobility, and which kind of covers a gambit of things in finance. And kind of start with my morning routine. Most days it's a little bit of laundry, and then it's get ready for work and get started. I like to start early while I'm fresh and engaged and really thinking about it. But if it's month end, there's no shower, no laundry. It's just straight into work to get things done and get things rolling. So, but I definitely find the concentration is much better in the morning. And
yeah. No, and I didn't hear the word coffee in there. I'm surprised. I think a lot of for myself, I'm always just have that cup of coffee first thing in the morning.
Yeah, no, that's part of it. That's definitely part of the full day routine. Yeah. Let's just say that.
Awesome. So yeah, Heather, we've known each other for quite some time, and I think it'd be really interesting to talk a bit about, obviously I know where you are today, your company today, but you've had a very interesting career path with, I think it started off with high pro feeds, moved on to trout, nutrition. So, from there, maybe we can start with a bit of your background. Where do you start at high pro, and then what has been your journey through there?
No, absolutely. So, well, I'm an accountant by trade, but I've never been interested in accounting. That's a fact of life. I really like the analysis, the entrepreneurial, the drivers of the business, and creating a business. That's the areas I like. So you need that kind of accounting piece to be able to kind of expand from there. And then so I moved to Calgary in 2014. Prior to that, I had a 10-year career in government, which was interesting. And then once you move into a private company, you realize it's a lot different, a lot more pressure, a lot of change. That's where you can really put in that entrepreneurial spirit. So I moved from there, did mostly financial analyst pieces, because I'm not big into the kind of the day-to-day accounting. I really like the business. And so I moved to Calgary in 2014 and took a position with High Pro, which is agricultural manufacturing. But the real reason that I liked the company and wanted to start there is private equity. They knew where they were going. They had the vision, and they knew what they wanted to build. And that's the kind of organization I wanted to be with. And I was actually with the company for 10 years when they went through an acquisition. So in that period of 10 years, you learn so much going through this transition piece of building the business, creating that foundation, creating the growth, and then getting it ready for sale. How do you present, you built this great company. How do you really present it in a fashion that's going to be desirable for someone to come in and buy it? And so then 5 years in, you're really kind of getting to know that business, getting it ready for sale, then bought by a kind of a global company that can just take it to the next level and really bring it from kind of that mid-size, really strong company to something really spectacular. And then in that process after that is, okay, how do you integrate? How do you get into these new, bigger systems, and create this kind of collaboration and integration with these other processes that are much more defined, I think, than when you can, be really agile in a small company and make changes, do things, and you have a lot of control to not having a lot of control pieces. But in all of those little steps, you just learn and you grow as a professional along the way.
So on that,
Because you have
so
to,
on that,
yeah,
yeah, so on that growth, so obviously started as finance analyst. So
yeah.
maybe going back to like the first, what was the culture like, the position, what did you learn in that kind of first, obviously learned the business, and it is a fascinating business because it's like such a complex supply chain, from, sourcing commodities like corn, right?
Yeah,
Transporting those to, the different
yeah.
plants. So they're manufactured feed and then selling and packaging and selling them, right?
Yeah, and that's where it is real. It doesn't sound complex, but it is complex because you're not dealing with, little quantities. You're dealing with giant quantities, low margin, giant quantities. You need to be on the ball all the time of these things. So starting in the financial analyst position was really learning the deep dive of the business, the day-to-day operations, what the production side, the logistics side. You're really deep into the details. And then as you kind of grown from, I moved into the controller position, then you have a kind of a bigger outlook. So you take that foundational knowledge that you learned, the pieces that you were deep diving, how do they fit into the bigger picture? And then I moved into the finance director position where it's another step above. So all of this knowledge, again, you build upon each one of those areas. So you can have that kind of higher look, but you still know the details to know what's really happening. So,
Yeah.
so you
And I
can
guess it's like,
understand
yeah,
the
and I guess
data.
it's like the driver. So the first thing, you kind of mentioned is just understand the business and probably the drivers of the business, right? Like through each aspect of the supply chain, from sourcing the commodity, maybe looking at pricing to, the logistical pieces. I mean, maybe explore some of that piece. Were you involved in some of the pricing, and
Yeah.
what is some of the analysis that you did? Because it is really fascinating, right?
Yeah, there's so much analysis that can be done. So that's where it's really deciding, okay, what is the important drivers? Is it the price? Is it the time? Is it the quality? Is the health and safety? All of those different pieces, and how do they fit in? And I think kind of getting into the analysis piece, you can really look at which is the best supplier to buy from. That's going to balance the price, the safety, the quality. Because sometimes you have to make some trade-offs. You can't always go with the cheapest price if it's not going to be here. If it's going to be here too late, it's not the right decision, sort of thing. So being able to kind of just deep dive into those areas, but you need to know which areas to deep dive into. You need to know what is important, what is the most important factor. Is it the quality? Is it the time? Is it the price? So what you're looking for, and making the right decision, so you're not just going down a rabbit hole and looking into things that don't really matter.
And when you started, and I think this is an important piece, was that infrastructure in place with those KPIs and some of the systems, or were you helping build out some of that, and maybe some, more importantly, the collaboration with finance and operations and sales, right? Were you
Yeah,
part of
and I
that
think
build process?
yeah, and I think there's always things in place. You can always go further. 100%. So even if you've got everything perfect, you can still push and up level to the next level. So in that position, I would say things, probably good foundationally, and then it's refinement. It is real refinement, as you kind of go through the process,
Yeah.
and getting the data and the categories and all these things together to know what you're building upon. So
And what about in that process, the relationship, with how important is the relationship with, say, sales operations and coming together? I mean, did you see that strengthen as you went through process? Was that kind of established
Yeah.
already? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. I think the collaboration is extremely important. I think you can't be in finance and be on an island, because you'll be looking over here, something that you think is important, but for the real business, these are the things that are important. So understanding what are the things that make the difference in the business. So you need to have that collaboration. There's no point of sending reports and, oh, we don't need it anyway. So you're just wasting time for nothing, and kind of going into the wrong areas. And creating the relationships with all of the departments. It's not an us versus them. It is us, or it is us together. The dual accountability, across the board. So having open conversations, learning about the business, is really important, I think, in any, regardless of the role that you play in finance, from the director to accounts payable, receivable. You need to understand what the business is, I think.
Yeah. And I think that alludes that a good segue into, like, finance business partnering, right? And it's, you can have the right kind of KPIs, systems, data to support, but I think it's so important that finance, becomes really a partner to the business. And
Yeah.
how did you find that at the organization as well?
Yeah, I think it comes more naturally for some people than others, right? In the finance world, where it's like you can, reach out, have a conversation, ask the questions, that sort of thing. Where, others in accounting finance, you don't usually go into accounting and finance if you are like, want to be a salesperson and super outgoing and that sort of thing. So there's different personalities and stuff like that. So I think everyone kind of has to find their way, and know how to have the conversations, and create the relationship that you do get the buy-in from, if it's sales, logistics, HR, whoever it is, creating the relationship so they have the trust in you as well. And because then you can really collaborate more if you create those relationships with the teams that you're working with.
Yeah. And would you say, yeah, like, do you have an approach or around creating those relationships? Is there, things that you do not, like, maybe it comes naturally, maybe, but is there,
No,
is
yeah.
there a
I don't
tick?
know if it comes naturally or it's
Okay.
something you get with experience and just discussions, but
Yeah.
it needs to be general interest. Um, General interest in what we're doing, how we're doing it, how can we support, and how can we collaborate. So it's not, oh, when you say how can I support, that doesn't mean, oh, now I become your secretary and going to do everything for you. It's how can I support you to make the right decisions, and what information do I need from you, what do you need from me. And you just have to have a conversation. It's either have a conversations in person, have conversations in teams, or there's so many ways to you know meet with people, that you don't have to physically kind of be in the same location to create that
Yeah.
relationship.
So it's like stepping out of the back office, stepping out from behind the spreadsheet, right? And having a conversation.
Yeah, yeah, because and you don't, and it's like, oh, I don't have time for that, but you have time for it, because you may be working on something that it doesn't bring the value. So then you can reduce the things that don't add value and add to the things that you do, of what do they really need. They only need these pieces, and these are what's going to make the decision. Maybe you don't need to do all this kind of back office stuff that you are doing.
Yeah. And then, obviously having conversation, being a finance business partner is critical. But then to back that up, obviously there's the importance of data and systems and information, right? And so maybe you can talk to, what was that like at High Pro, where it started to maybe where where it got to, you know.
Yeah, I think in the data for sure is 100% important, because you need the real numbers, because I think everybody inherently knows, you inherently know your business, you inherently know what your issues are. But then when you see the real numbers, then you can see, oh, it is maybe not as big of an issue as I thought, but this thing might be where we need to focus. See, so you need the data to really support that you are going in the right direction. And I think this the simple, well classified, easy to understand, accurate, timely, all of those sort of things are super important. And those are the things when, when it's a really young company and just building, is to kind of create those foundations, create what is going to make sense, not an overcomplicated system for what is actually needed to drive the business. I think you need to complicate it to the point, only to the point of what you actually need, because you can spend so much time in these little details that don't make the difference. They don't bring in the real dollars, right? And that's maybe one thing too, when you get into finance, you see a lot of numbers. It's remembering it's real dollars, and it's not just numbers on the page. So what does it count or matter, or what is going to shift the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. And just like you made a good point there, like don't focus on the smaller stuff. And I think you did allude to it. It's, understanding the business drivers, understanding the strategy. And, I have this opinion that should be the guiding light for whatever you do when you're integrating data and integrating systems, right? Because I feel like that removes the noise, right? Because you can get caught up in like, oh, this data is not right, or we don't have this data. And it's like, well, when it comes to this, does that actually have any impact on on the business, right? So I don't know, like your opinion, like same approach, strategy first, and then that helps shape a lot of,
Yeah, it 100% does. It's the strategy, communicating, understanding it, knowing what you need. So taking the time to step back and really looking at it, of what do we need, that you get, because you need it to the lowest level of what your needs are. But then if it becomes if you've got it over complicated, then you risk the accuracy, you risk the timeliness and all of those sort of things, to pull it back together into that high level piece. Like I always think, it's like, who cares how much we spent on taxi if we're 100,000 over budget on travel, right? That piece doesn't matter. It's the big picture. How much did we spend on travel and why, sort of thing, and not how much is parking and how much is taxi. That's not going to change any decisions. So.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think that's the biggest part, and when it comes to, talking about data and systems, what role do you think finance plays in that, in that seat, right? Because there's IT, IT has a seat at the table, but then finance, where do you see finance's role in terms of helping shape that, data reporting that drive these decisions?
Yeah, I think in the finance side, for sure, is kind of helping us to really lay the groundwork of what do you need, that you can do audit, you can have accurate bookkeeping, because you need that no matter what, is you need to follow kind of your legislation, your tax, your all that sort of stuff. And how you can bring it into the systems in the most efficient and effective way. So these are the pieces that we need. Here's where we're going to get them. How can we get them efficiently, accurately, timely, in there? So and how can they be categorized or standardized to come together, that they can spit out something that is going to be meaningful. You're not just spending all of your time collecting and collecting and collecting and not being able to actually deliver a finished product that that drives decisions, and in enough time to actually make a decision that's gonna you could pivot and actually go with it. So
talking about decisions, is there an example of a decision that you made that was, rightly or wrongly, where, either based off data or just maybe a specific example where either it was helpful or, you didn't have the data, or there's maybe an issue with the data?
yeah, I would say yeah, I think like I can say in my current position, we have a lot of systems. So there's the standardization of data is not there. So you may miss some of those pieces of how things come together to really understand how they fit in, and stuff like that. I would say, yeah, you can, if your data is not accurate, not categorized properly, not you can be chasing down a rabbit hole in the wrong direction, if it's not really simplified and really made into something that is meaningful. So I think the accuracy always has to come first, accuracy and timely when getting that data together. And that's where, once you overcomplicate it, you start to lose the accuracy, and you start, because now you miscategorize all these sort of things because you've got 20 different things that you're looking at, and it becomes difficult. It becomes difficult to get it in. It's difficult to get it together. So
Just piling on the stress on the workload, and just
yeah, and it
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
And then just taking a bit of a pivot to, maybe the cultural piece, the people piece, right? Is, how did you find, obviously you said you started in government, different
yeah.
culture there. You moved to private equity. Now you're, in this new role, which is, I think a non-for-profit. Am I right? No.
Oh no, private equity.
Private equity.
Yeah.
Okay, still private equity.
That's my
What
love.
have you, yeah, what have you noticed culturally? Is there, like, through your journey, is there anything that jumps out to you that's like, that you liked, you disliked, or that you've learned about, the different cultures?
Yeah, I would say culturally, I think in the different kind of positions that I've had is the culturally, like especially with finance, it can either be treated as a back office function, and the managers, the people in it can feel like that, and maybe not feel that comfort level to step out and create those relationships and stuff like that, where they feel, okay, this is back office, we sit here, we do our work, and we don't really have a say in it, to the complete opposite, where it's like, no, finance is really they have a seat at the table just like everybody else, and are part of the conversation and creating that change, and helping with the drivers, and understanding them, and decision making and stuff like that. So I think kind of culturally you see it of how how each of the teams fit in and how they feel important. And I think that everybody should have a say, and bring their expertise to the table. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're in private equity, private for a reason. I guess there's a certain level of accountability, a certain level of, drive there to get things done, right? Would you say, what kind of pace do you operate in
yeah,
this
I
environment?
like the
Yeah.
fast pace and the
Yeah.
results and the accountability and the that vision. I think that really comes with it of, here's our company, and here's our strategy, and we know where we're going. That real end result. So you really have something to work towards.
And it's a playbook. Like, I remember, like,
Yeah.
obviously we've spoken before, and I know, like, high pro and trial and whatnot. And I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think part of the playbook was like, come in, drive sales, like really drive sales. And then, that's like a kind of 3-year kind of expand the top line. And then the next chapter of that story is, okay, let's look at the level of profit. Let's look at EBITDA, right? And start determining, okay, within that sales, within sales, within that customer base, what can we do to drive EBITDA, right? And that is obviously for private equity is part of the value, valuation of a company is usually one of the metrics that's used. And
it's
so I mean that's how I've seen it as an outsider, right? I don't know, inside was that the same
I think
kind of message, or was it?
it's definitely the same, because the purpose is to grow the company and to really create something. And it's so you kind of have that kind of real vision. I think with both, my current company and my other company, growth and EBITDA is 100% the focus. But both of these organizations are really also client focused. Really, these are necessary services, critical things, so that client experience and keeping the clients and servicing them and giving them the best value add. So it's not just we want to grow EBITDA, but also how can we, be efficient, be proactive, be innovative, that we really service our customers, that they want to keep returning, because you need that organic growth as well as you need the market growth,
the share of wallet
in the business. Absolutely. And the way to do that is to have the focus on the customers, not just on the bottom line, because the focus there on the sales and the customer experience is what ultimately will grow the bottom line. So.
In a structured manner, right? And I think
absolutely. So.
And again, I've always, I mean, to be honest, I'm same as you. I gravitate toward, more private equity, because and the cool thing is that you can see the impact as well. So you see there's the vision, and then it's just like you can see what you're doing makes a difference, and you're actually helping with that vision and that growth as well, right?
I like the fun, the fast pace. There's a little bit of stress and competition and pressure. So which I think that's what makes it kind of fun to work at. You're not just doing the same thing every day, but how can we be innovative? How can we do something? So you're really thinking and changing in your work and
thinking, obviously thinking value. Do you see, like, with your experience so far, like, key value drivers? You already mentioned one, like, obviously being customer centric is critical. Is there any little value drivers that you see that you've seen within private equity where there's really a lot of focus to help boost the value of the organization?
I think the processes, I'd say that for sure, the client focus, but your process, your efficiency, your innovation within the company kind of drives that middle of your P&L on your labor and your operating costs and stuff like that. So you kind of drive the savings through really understanding your business and how can we do it better? How can we, shave a little here or there, sort of thing, that we run in the most efficient manner. Because then you can pass some of those savings on to your customers and you take some for yourself. That kind of creates a bit of a win-win, because things are always changing. You can always do it better. You come up with something really spectacular, and then you're like, I thought of this, and I can do this, and to keep the creative thinking going.
And how did you do? So, like, that's interesting, because it's like, how did you how did you find that in the organizations? Was it like, and even talking like down to like, you know, quarterly strategy meetings, like how did the organization, how are you involved in that or
Yeah,
that value creation? Um,
I think a little bit of, i- in I guess in the meetings and discussions and stuff like that, really understanding, okay, what do we need to work on in the areas that you need to focus on. So then you can kind of deep dive and do some projects and really think about those areas and how we can improve. And then I think it's in there also in our day-to-day work life of, I've come up with a really great process. What's as you learn, and then and as you get exposed to like new ideas, new technology, new this, then it's like, oh yeah, I see that. How can I do something that I'm doing now even better? It's just like, 10 years ago, all Excel. Now it's like, no, I don't want anything to do with Excel. I'm just all Power BI. That's it.
yeah,
And so I wouldn't always kind of going forward with the things and a little bit of problem solving. It's like a little bit of a puzzle, a little bit of a problem solving.
yeah,
Um,
that's it. And and then and just thinking about like, so with private equity, did you find that they like quarterly, was it like really well defined? Obviously, there's this vision, right?
yeah.
Did you say it was pretty structured, like, hey, this annual budget, this is what we're looking to do, and that's broken down into these quarterly objectives? Or was there a lot of freedom, shall we say, or just, kind of
Yeah, I
moving?
think there's a lot of freedom because you definitely have the things that you must report that you
Mhm.
must report on. You must report on your EBITDA, your
Yeah,
revenue, your targets, how you're going to miss them, but also the bit of the solve. So if you aren't hitting it, now what do we do? So what do we do? Either grow the top line, create some savings, something, a little bit of problem solving throughout the year, um, of how we can pivot and change direction. I think it really happens in agriculture when you have weather, when you have avian flu, when you have these surprises that you can't account for, and then you kind of have to think of bits of, okay, now what? So it's very integrative sort of thing. I think you always need that long-term goal, and these are the areas we want to focus. But also where do you need to pivot and be kind of agile in those decision making. But I also think you can't chase, shiny objects that along the way, because then if you're always, oh, this is cool, I'm going to do this sort of thing, and then here's the big picture, the big drivers, and miss them completely. So you need to maintain that focus, but you need to have enough agility to tweak and change along the way.
yeah, a little opportunistic, be opportunistic, but just ensure you're not kind of chasing too many initiatives at the same time, right?
Yeah, that's the fun ones. Oh, let's go do this one, but no, it's not going to bring the difference that you need, um or that sort of thing. So you have to keep the focus and understand what you're
Yeah,
doing.
and yeah, and I know that can be hard. Now, in terms of like talking focus, obviously, how important do you find like forecasting and kind of integrated business planning when it comes to these decisions? And um, how much emphasis do you put on those, financial forecasts? And do you do like try to do monthly? Do you look at it at a weekly level? What?
Yeah, I definitely not on a weekly level, and well, I don't not on the monthly level if I can help it. But I think you have to look at kind of the monthly level of where you're going in the month, so you can pivot quickly, right? So if things are going off, then you can pivot quickly. But I definitely think the forecasting, where are we going? Where do we expect? What are the trends? So then there's no surprises.
Mm.
Um, so it is clear, 100% clear of what is going to happen. If we kind of stay on the same track, if we do this, if we, have these actions in, what can we get? With a little bit of conservatism and a little bit of risks and opportunities kind of taken into play. But because, when you're just really reactive looking at the historical data, it's great. It gives you the areas you need to focus, but you can't change that. You can only change the direction you're going in the future. So really understanding what does it look like? What does the real forecast look like? So you know where to make the changes. So
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, and you're kind of creating that story or that path, right? On like, this is where I expect to land, and this is what happens. So, and I think you coined it well. Like, I'm going to take this from you as like, I think, and you call it kind of from reactive reporting to proactive decision making, right? And I feel like reporting and forecasting is a core piece of that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Where I think, really that back office finance and maybe traditional is, let's get all the reports and let's variance analysis. Let's, make it all pretty, take, 10 days to close the month because it's all good. But it is good. It gives you the picture of what happens, but the focus should really be on what is going to happen. So you can just get that picture in the drivers that make sense. What are the key things that we need from understanding what did happen? So then we can make corrections in the future, keep doing what we're doing. If it's really working, maybe think, do we stop doing, sort of thing. So instead of really finance spending all the time and effort and all these things into these really detailed reports, but really into what are the things that drove those issues, so we can trend them on the right direction and maybe stop the bleeding, or really say, hey, this is really working. Can we do more of this, sort of thing?
It's really the why. Yeah, it's the why behind the numbers, right? It's like, why did it happen, and what can we do to do more of it or less of it, right?
Yeah. And that's, for me, is the kind of creating that standardization in the simplification. Because let's say, you got your report for the month end and it really down to all these details, and then all of a sudden you focus, oh, well, what is this number? And then you go down that rabbit hole of, and you spend a week trying to figure out what made up that number. But does it drive the business? Does that piece of information actually, will it matter going forward? So what are the big ticket items that do matter? These are the ones that we should be reporting on and driving forward with.
And I think, so it sounds like, I mean, I'm going to ask the question, I think you kind of answered already, but what would you recommend to organizations or, other finance folks, in terms of, finding those true drivers and KPIs, and how do you avoid that kind of analysis paralysis, right?
Yeah. And I would say is kind of stepping back from the data a bit. It is stepping back from it and to really, talk about the business and what does make the difference in the business. So does labor make a difference? Does revenue make a difference? Does travel make a difference? Does these sort of, what makes the difference in the company? Because then you can say, these are the ones that we really want to report on. These are the ones that we want to focus on, because they are the ones that will drive the business forward. So rather than letting the details or this sort of thing, be where all the focus is. It is the focus that you decide. Because, if you're in your business and running your business, then, what you can have those conversations of what makes the difference, what is going to drive the change that you need. So.
And I think most often than not, the business folks, the sales, the production, operations folks are probably the guys that know most, the senior guys know most of that stuff, right? And this usually gut. And then you just, you validate that with data, right? And you're like, yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. Let's focus more on this.
Yeah, they know where they spend their money. They know where they spend their money. You might not say it, but they know. And they know the customers that are willing to, go a bit further and all these sort of things. That's again where the conversation has to come in the business partnership between finance, that we are actually reporting and delivering on what the needs are for the business and what is going to drive, because they inherently know, but and then it validates if the business really has a true understanding of the spend. They may think, oh, it's not that much, but then when you look at the numbers, they're like, oh, it's craziness actually. But if it's too far detailed or something like that, you really can get lost in the picture of what it is.
And I think you making a good point here is like, and probably more of a question back to you is, when you're bringing these data sources together, right? Say across the supply chain, right? You've got your pricing and your customer information, manufacturing information, and when you bring it all together, is there an example that you have where, hey, previously, when those data sources weren't connected, but then you started to connect them all together to be more integrated? Is there some aha moments or things that just popped for yourself or for people, sales folks, that was just like, wow, that's an eye opener. We need to, make a decision around this. Is there an example that you have?
Yeah, I think so, actually. I think one example is discounts. That's we give them sort of thing, and it's we need the business, all this sort of thing. But then when you actually put it, and then on each line item, they get their really looking at it from their system or their P&L or something like that. It's, oh, it doesn't look so bad. It's whatever like that. And then you put it all together, and then you realize, oh my Lord, we're spending $900,000 a month, and that's all of a sudden it's like, okay, that is a true driver of the business, because it's a huge expense when each kind of person looks at their own. It may be not that big on their own. You put it together, and then all of a sudden you really have a significant amount of money in there, and then it just, and even the standardization, the categorization, where we may look at it as one system or one team looks at it from this perspective, and the other one from this perspective, and not realizing how they fit together, sort of thing. That's
like looking at it like a customer P&L, right? It's like a line item on a customer P&L. Like, what is the level of EBITDA that maybe each customer, and it sounds like that the drivers that you want to focus on, one being discounts.
And so you need the data. At the lowest level, at the lowest level that you can, but in a standardized manner that you can roll it, so then you do see the full impact. Because when you can get stuck in the details, and the details of this customer, and the more the company grows, the bigger it gets, and then there's a lot of customers, and you can't look at each one individually. It's not possible, right? You will be just doing that all day long. You cannot look at those customers individually. You have to amalgamate them,
segment them, and then put them against benchmarks, right? Like, here's a benchmark, what we should be doing. Whoa, this one's just like way off the mark, high level discount, who's giving those away, right?
Exactly. So discounts is one of my least favorite things. So
your least favorite. Of course, coming from a finance person, of course, that makes a lot of sense, right? So and then maybe just another question. So moving from this entrepreneurial high pro, and then going into this big corporate, bigger corporation.
Yeah.
And I think we've spoken where maybe you don't have as much access to the data, and you feel like maybe more handcuffed, how was that transition for you? I mean, maybe
Yeah,
elaborate a bit about that, because we've spoken about it, but it's a good
yeah.
topic where it's like, yeah, all this data, and then now you maybe you didn't sit well backwards, but just it was harder. It was harder to operate. So
Yeah, it definitely was. And you know what? It was a really good learning opportunity. It's hard when you're in it. It's hard when you're in it and you're going through change. And I think with any change, it's the same. When you're in it, it's like where's the end of the tunnel and stuff like that. And then it kind of having a good, strong change management. So I think is key. So then everybody in the organization really knows the why and here's where we're going, here's what we have, and and how it fits in the long term. So then they're kind of, working together and not working against the piece. I think, yeah, going from being private equity to being part of a global, all of a sudden you go from having lots of control and you can, be creative as you want and put in your own fashion. And then now, okay, here is this, and it is and then these are the confines you need to work in. And I think you still, even though you're in those confines, should still take the liberty and the creativity and accountability within your uh within the frame, right? It's
yeah,
here's where I have, this is what I can do, because you can still, I think everybody can still innovate, be creative, and no one is locked down to this is the only way. Because I think if you have good ideas and stuff, you have to think about them, bring them forward, that sort of thing, and not just complain and turn
status
and
quo,
waste.
right? I mean, I know
Yeah,
you and I, we like to,
yeah,
proactiveness, making a difference, finding a better way, right?
yeah,
Not so much
yeah.
that.
But I do think that the change management actually, for me, end up being more important than the data and how it works together. It ended up being, in the end, the change management of really understanding the why, and here's what we're doing, and this is the next piece, and how we can all fit together, and creating that buy-in, and creating the realization, hey, you work for a bigger company, there's new systems, new technology, new things you can learn.
Mhm.
So you can really expand in your career and stuff like that. So it can be definitely a good thing, I think, if the changes is handled well and really well communicated. And
It's the biggest thing, right? The culture,
yeah,
the impact and change, because it happens at such a fast pace, and
y-
communication is so important, especially just communicating the vision.
yeah,
Um, th-
100%.
two more questions for you. As you're moving into this new role, you've ton of experience. So, um, do you have a vision? Have you taken all your knowledge? Are you now, do you have a clear vision and executable strategy in your new role today?
I would say, so I've been in my new role for almost 4 months now, and for me it was it was a bit of a time for a change, and I think we all have that kind of growth and time and change and stuff like that. And I can say I have a vision, and it's ever changing, and a little bit of, here's kind of my strategy, but as you learn, you have to pivot and really think about it. And I think getting the understanding of the business and the business needs, I think, is important before you just jump in and, oh, here's my strategy and all these sort of things. But that you can build on your experience, either in my previous roles before. You just constantly build on, okay, what's the best practices, um and these ideas that you can see, like, oh, we do this in here, and how can we translate it and do it here, sort of thing. So yeah, I think there's always opportunity to kind of build and adjust
No,
and create
absolutely.
strategy as you go. And yeah, so
Have you come in with a, you know what, I'm going to spend my first 30, 60 days in, understanding the business? Is that kind of your approach? would you say? And
Yeah.
any tips or tricks for people that are starting a new role and, as a finance director or?
Yeah, I would say is kind of is asking the questions and creating the understanding what the business is, and and just having open conversations and being open to what's happening, why it's happening, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the successes, that sort of thing. And it's not that's not the way you should be doing it or anything, not to have those kind of attitudes or preconceived kind of,
not to be critical, right?
Not to be critical. Yeah, not to be critical, because everybody has their challenges, regardless of which organization you're in or where you are in your stage of life. Like, everybody has challenges and things that and strong intentions and stuff like that. So I think just being open and understanding and collaborative and building the relationships, I think
getting to know the people, right?
Yeah, it is really, the people are the drivers of the business. The data counts, and you need it, and you need accurate and timely and well created things, but you need the people are as important, more important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then last question. So, based off, all your experience today, what kind of advice would you give to listeners out there? Is there any pieces of advice, people that are in finance or directors or?
Yeah, I would say is to not overcomplicate. And it's funny, when you go from one position to another company, you realize, the EBITDA is the same calculation, customer, the way you think about your customer, it's very similar, really, really similar. And it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. You need to create a strong foundation, that you really have your house in order. So you can build on that foundation, and that you actually be part of the business, and understand and create the relationships, and kind of create these categorizations of your data, or the standardization of your processes, these sort of things, that it doesn't become the be all and end all of what you do, but you actually use it to really drive the change and to really drive decisions, sort of thing. And I think really understanding and knowing your needs, and asking the questions, and seeing what's going to make the difference in everybody's personal, in your own personal work, and in your business, and sort of thing, I think is extremely important.
Probably the people, right? And just having a good team of like finance, well, if you're in finance business partners, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
Strategists. Perfect. Well, Heather, again, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. We'll probably leave it there, and we'll be talking soon.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I enjoyed it. And I'm always happy to chat, because I like to chat on anything data, KPIs, the innovation, creativity. So no, I really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Integrated Business Planning Podcast. If you have a transformational story to tell, or would like to drop some wisdom or share some insights about your experience or your journey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. So please reach out. Thank you.